Finland is worried about Russia. That's already well known. There was a big reason that the country broke decades of neutrality to join NATO. Finland saw what was happening in Ukraine, and it believed that Russian President Vladimir Putin could make Finland his next target if it didn't have NATO protection. It's starting to look like Finland was right. Russia is building something sinister near Finland, and satellites have just caught it. On June 18, the Finnish media outlet YLE published an in-depth report digging into an array of satellite images that demonstrate precisely what Russia is doing near its borders. Those images will be examined in more detail a little later in the video. For now, the key takeaway is this: Russia is engaging in significant construction work, which began last winter, in a closed military town just across the border from Finnish Lapland. Excavation work is being carried out. An array of new buildings has sprung up, and it looks like Russia is building a new military town it can use to station thousands of troops just a few dozen miles away from Finland's border. Looks like, yes. But the reality is that this is all confirmed. Russia's Murmansk regional administration is already bragging about what the country is doing just a stone's throw away from Finland. In a post on its website, the administration told the world that Murmansk governor Andrei Chibis conducted a working visit to the city of Kandalaksha, where he inspected facilities being repaired and created as part of the NATO renovation program. Chibis even released a statement of his own, in which he heaped praise on both the construction workers and Putin. We see the dynamics of change, the Murmansk Regional Administration website reports Chibis as saying. And when you see construction, as it's happening now, the renovation, how the houses are being transformed, the emotions of the residents, it's worth a lot. Therefore, we will continue this work. Many thanks to President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin for the decision to systematically allocate funds for the NATO renovation program. Within the framework of this plan, not only is what already exists being put in order, but new facilities are also being built that are necessary for our military. This pandering statement is intended to send a message to Finland. Russia is engaging in a border build-up, and it's not even trying to hide it. How extensive that build-up has become is revealed in the YLE article and its in-depth examination of satellite images that have recorded what's happening at a trio of sites where Russian construction work is ongoing. The first site that the Murmansk government website mentions, Kandalaksha. That city is gearing up to become the home to a pair of brigades in Lupche-Savino, which retired Finnish military intelligence officer Major Marko Eklund says will bring around 2,000 soldiers to the area. That's a major concern for Finland. The rebuilt garrison is roughly 68 miles away from the border it shares with Russia. It's also located in a city that serves as one of Russia's key transport hubs in the White Sea, though Lupche-Savino is a closed military town that can only be accessed with special permission. The satellite images YLE obtained tell the story. It says that work is being conducted on a 0.87-mile stretch of land where forest has already been cleared and excavation work has begun. This is important. The Lupche-Savino garrison already existed before this work began. What the satellite images are showing is that Russia is looking to expand on what it already has. Old buildings have also been demolished in the region, with Russia replacing them with a series of new structures. YLE isn't sure what these structures will contain. In the past, Lupche-Savino served as a home for some of Russia's air defense systems, though that changed in more recent years, likely due to Putin needing those aerial defenses for his Ukraine invasion. Now, it's serving as a storage site for engineering units, YLE says. But for how long? According to YLE, a photograph that seems to show Russia's construction plans suggests that Putin plans to construct about 10 new buildings in the region. It looks like Russia hasn't broken ground on any of those buildings yet. At least the satellite images YLE obtained don't seem to show the foundations for any of these buildings seen on the construction plans. Eklund says that Russia is building up in Kandalaksha because the region is key on a strategic level. It's where Russia's territory close to Finland is at its narrowest, which presents a serious risk of bottlenecking to Putin and his troops. If this bottleneck were lost in some situation, Eklund tells YLE, The land connection between the Kola Peninsula and Russia's northern nuclear submarine fleet to the rest of Russia would be cut off. Putin can't let that happen. All of these new buildings, plus the 2,000 plus troops heading to the Lupche-Savino, are there to ensure this bottleneck doesn't fall into Finnish hands. A row of trucks is also seen in the satellite images, which serve as further evidence of the ongoing construction work. Plus, there's all of the confirmed investment to consider. YLE says that Russia has poured around $527 million into Murmansk, which is being used to build a new school and cultural center, as well as likely paying for the military installations. Why a school and cultural center? Services are needed for professional soldiers, Eklund says. It's hard to recruit families to the middle of nowhere. As benign as they may appear, these civic facilities are actually a sinister sign that Putin is 100% serious about what he's doing in Kandalaksha. He wants to make the regions he's renovating family-friendly. In doing so, he can attract more soldiers, and those soldiers will become either Russia's first line of defense in a fight against Finland, or the first to enter Finnish territory if and when Russia invades. And there's more. Much more. Moving next to the Karelian Isthmus, Russia is building up on this tiny stretch of land too. Measuring between 28 and 68 miles wide, the Karelian Isthmus lies between the Gulf of Finland and Russia's Lake Ladoga and is about 5,800 square miles in total. It's also home to Russia's Sapyornoye garrison, YLE says, as well as being just 43.5 miles from the border. So this is another key strategic location that Putin wants to build up in preparation for a conflict with Finland. Before the new satellite images emerged, the region was home to a small Soviet-era garrison, with Eklund estimating it to contain about 500 soldiers serving as part of Russia's nuclear, biological and chemical protection regiment. But that's all starting to change. YLE's satellite images show that military equipment has been arriving in Sapyornoye since at least November 2024, though many of the images it has are of poor quality. YLE proves that vehicles are arriving though. A before and after comparison of satellite images taken from a vehicle storage facility shows the area to be almost completely barren in May 2023. Fast forward to May 19 of this year, and that facility now contains a lot more vehicles, with several dozen seeming to have been added to the stockpiles over the last couple of years. Eklund tells YLE that this vehicle build-up signifies that Russia is sending engineered troops and their equipment into Sapyornoye. He also says that some of the larger vehicles seen in the satellite images may be there for Russia to use as pontoon bridges if it needs to cross any of the waterways separating Sapyornoye from mainland Finland. It's a bit like a builder's equipment rental yard, where there's a wide range of machines, Eklund says in his analysis of the images. YLE points out that this vehicle build-up may also be linked to the Kamenka garrison, which is just 31 miles away from Sapyornoye. That garrison is also being upgraded to become a division, which will require more vehicles and even more extensive construction. That means even more troops close to the Finnish border. A garrison usually contains 4,000 soldiers, YLE points out. If Putin is upgrading the Kamenka garrison to a division, that adds 6,000 troops who will soon be just a couple of dozen miles away from Finland. Eklund adds that what's seen in the Sapyornoye satellite images may indicate that Russia is planning to station a second garrison there to build up into a combined battalion. As the number of troops in Kamenka grows, commissioning a second garrison may become necessary, Eklund points out. That second one could be in Sapyornoye, since it has old military infrastructure and good training areas. And then there's the third region, Karelia. This is an interesting location. It stretches from the White Sea into the Gulf of Finland, and it's home to two of Europe's largest lakes. One of those lakes, Lake Ladoga, is also near the location of Karelian Isthmus, revealing that Karelia isn't much further from Finland's border. It's in Karelia where Russia may be instituting the bulk of its military build-up. YLE says that Putin has created the brand new 44th Army Corps in the Republic of Karelia, which is currently being built up and may soon host 15,000 soldiers, all stationed just behind the eastern border with Finland. That new corps will need equipment, and that's where the region of Petrozavodsk comes into play. Petrozavodsk is already home to a massive depot where Russia stores Soviet-era trucks, armoured vehicles, artillery and other specialised equipment. YLE says it's been examining satellite images of the depot since 2022, revealing that the sheer volume of equipment at the base is starting to increase. Another before and after image shows a pair of storage locations that are filled up over the past 3 years, along with 2 new structures. These buildings are likely housing some of Russia's more sensitive equipment, though they may also be used to refurbish the Soviet-era equipment already at the base so it's ready to use if required. Also in Petrozavodsk, a new railway troops brigade has been created, which will join a battalion of a few hundred soldiers in the region. There's also a mixed aviation unit stationed in Petrozavodsk, claims a report published by a local media outlet. Wiley points out that none of these military units have been mentioned in the media outside of Russia up until this point, demonstrating that Putin's build-up may be even more extensive than first thought. Oh, and there are the tanks and people. A lot of them. According to the Helsinki Times, everything that's seen in the satellite images YLE shares is part of Russia's recent efforts to reactivate the Leningrad Military District. That district, as a whole, contained approximately 30,000 soldiers before Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022. It went almost dormant for a while, with Russia pulling some troops out to serve in Ukraine. But now that Putin seems to have his eyes on Finland, he's looking to boost the district beyond its initial capabilities to hit 100,000. That's according to Eklund, who also tells YLE that there were around 100 main battle tanks in the Leningrad Military District back in 2022. That number is going to rise significantly as more of Russia's renovations are completed. What this shows is an extensive military build-up that signals Putin's desire to station as many soldiers as possible just a few dozen miles away from Finland's border. This is the future focus of Russia's leader. He still believes that Russia will win in Ukraine, and after it does, he'll be able to turn his attention to other nations that he believes are vulnerable. Finland is one of those nations, at least in Putin's eyes. YLE's satellite images are proof that Russia's leader is preparing for something big. Perhaps something like a full-blown invasion of Finland. At least, that's one of the reasons for this massive Russian build-up. On May 21, The Guardian quoted the head of strategy of the Finnish Defence Forces, Sami Niemi. He says that Russia is preparing to rejuvenate its border forces. They're changing structures, and we see moderate preparations when it comes to building infrastructure close to our borders, meaning that they will, once the war in Ukraine hopefully ends, start to bring back the forces that have been fighting in Ukraine, especially land forces. Those forces may be joining new troops, if YLE's satellite images are to be believed. And that leads to a second reason for the build-up: training and servicing. YLE points out that Russia is likely to use all of its new facilities to train new troops and service old equipment. That equipment may eventually find its way into Ukraine, depending on how much longer the war lasts. But it's the freshly trained troops that will be the bigger concern. Will they be trained close to Finland's border before they head to Ukraine too? Or does Russia plan to send Ukraine war veterans to the border regions to train those new soldiers, with both the veterans and the trainees staying near Finland to present a constant threat? Nobody knows for sure, but Eklund seems to suggest it may be the latter. If the sole purpose was to send the troops to Ukraine, he says, there would of course be no need for such infrastructure there. But apparently there is a need, which only adds to the assumption that Putin is preparing to station thousands of his soldiers near Finland. Putin's mouthpiece, Dmitry Peskov, adds another potential reason for the build-up to the list: NATO, specifically Finland's membership in the alliance. Back in April 2023, Reuters quoted Peskov as saying, "The enlargement of NATO is an encroachment on our security and on Russia's national interests. We're going to be following what happens in Finland closely and how it threatens us." Peskov was referring to Finland's 2023 ascension to the status of a full-fledged NATO member. The growth of NATO is a clear threat to Russia. The more nations join that organization, especially in regions of Europe on which Putin has his eyes, the bigger the Russian response will be. Peskov outlined that back in 2023. What's followed with Russia's border build-up is the tangible evidence of how much of a threat Russia considers Finland to be. Putin may also have more than just Finland on his mind. Now that Finland is a NATO member, Russia's leader may see that border as a potentially key front in a wider war against all of NATO. Senior research fellow at the Royal United Services Institute think tank, Ed Arnold, backed that suggestion when speaking to France 24 in May. If NATO and Russia go to war in the Baltics, the Finns aren't going to just sit there. They're likely going to counterattack and annex the Murmansk peninsula. And the Russian nuclear forces and the Northern Fleet are all based in Murmansk. Remember the point Eklund made about the bottleneck? Russia knows that Finland is perfectly positioned to cut off key supply lines between St. Petersburg and Murmansk. The border build-up is an example of Putin trying to get ahead of the situation. And throw the growing international rivalry over the Arctic into the mix. That may be another reason for the build-up. New shipping routes are emerging as the Arctic ice melts, as are potentially massive oil and gas reserves. The World Wildlife Fund points out that the Arctic already supplies about 10% of the world's oil and 25% of its natural gas. As more ice melts, greater access could be provided to untapped reserves. Russia wants that access. Beyond Finland, it may be building up so many troops in the three areas YLE highlights because it wants to have them ready to take part in Arctic training exercises. It's also possible the revamped buildings serve as training facilities, as mentioned earlier, which might allow Russia to cycle soldiers to the Arctic while maintaining a constant presence close to Finland's border. Two birds, one stone. Of course, Finland isn't taking all of this lying down. Its previously mentioned NATO membership is a direct response to Putin's increasingly aggressive approach to European geopolitics. That membership was spurred on by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it's intended to serve as a deterrent to any ideas Putin may have of invading Finland. After all, Finland now falls under Article 5 of the NATO Charter. That article lies at the heart of NATO's collective defense, offering a one-for-all and all-for-one response to any aggressor. If Russia invades Finland now, it'll have to contend with 31 other nations, including military heavyweights like the US, UK, France and Germany coming to Finland's aid. Finland is also in the process of building a 124-mile border fence that covers some of the riskiest parts of its 835-mile border with Russia. Euractiv reported that the first 22 miles of this 15-foot high fence were completed on May 22, and Finland is working as quickly as it can to get the rest done by the end of 2026. That fence is supposed to stop migrants from countries like Syria from entering Finland. Some 1,300 migrants arrived in Finland in 2023 alone from these types of third countries, with the nation believing that Putin has a hand in the massive influx as part of his hybrid warfare strategy. Still, that fence will also serve as at least a partial barrier if Russia tries to invade. There's also the strengthening of Finland's military. Breaking Defense reported in April that Finland's new defense spending goal is to reach 3% of the country's gross domestic product by 2029. Finland is also building up the strength of its army. Right now, Global Firepower says that military has 24,000 active personnel and 870,000 reserves. That's thanks to Finland's mandatory military training, meaning it has a potential fighting force of 947,800 personnel when also taking its 53,800 paramilitary forces into account. That number may soon grow higher. On May 14, Reuters reported on a new Finnish plan to raise the age limit for its reservists, who would add another 125,000 soldiers to this army. None of this is going to stop Putin from building up near the border. It can't. Everything Russia is doing is happening on its own territory, meaning Finland can't force Putin into pushing the brakes. What it can do is what's happening now. Watch, wait, build. Create a military force that will make Putin think twice about starting a fight with a nation that's getting stronger by the year and now has the backing of 31 NATO allies. Will that be enough? Only time will tell. All of this assumes that Russia will even be able to start a fight after the Ukraine war ends. That's in doubt. Putin's forces are getting hammered, and events outside of his own country are set to cause severe problems for Russia's military. Find out more in our video where we explain why Russia is running out of Shahed drones and may be on a countdown to defeat against Ukraine. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to The Military Show for more commentary on everything Russia is doing to try to project power in Europe.